In this tutorial, we're going to create the right-hand wall in Tony's garage. You're going to receive a template along with the link to the video tutorial in your email. And it will look like this. You'll see in the upper right-hand corner, there's the cinder block reference for the scale you'll want the pattern that you see on the left, which we will create together, to scale down to. All right, so when you're done, you should have a PSD with a cinder block pattern like so. So let's go ahead and get started and develop the pattern. We're going to start with a new file. I'll hit Command N, and we're going to set it for 3 inches by 3 inches and 200 dpi. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our guides. If we take a look at the finished product, just the way we did with our brick pattern, we had set the guides at 1/16 of an inch increments. And then in the middle, we went on either side a 1/16 of an inch as well. And then we'll set a middle guide for the center of our file and 1/16 of an inch guides on that. I'm going to start to do this, and then I'll return and we'll review what we have done with our guides. Now to get your guides, you can hit Command R, or you can go to View and choose Rulers. Now I'm almost finished dropping the guides in I want, but what I'm going to do first is I'm going to put a middle value gray on this first layer. I'm going to do so that you'll see the guide configuration a little bit more clearly. And I'm going to drop in the last 2 horizontal guides so you can understand the placement and the measurement a little bit clearer. So I'm going to go to my swatch menu and I'm going to get a middle value gray. I'll try 40%. I'll hit Option Delete to fill that. And now I'm going to zoom in on this. It's easier to get the incremental movement of your guides if you get closer. The more you zoom in on a Photoshop file, the more precise the measurements become. Now you can also hold your Shift key. So I'm going to drag my Shift key down to the horizontal line that splits my 3 inch by 3 inch file in half, right? So that you can see the first guide was dropped at 1.5 inches. Now if I zoom in a bit more, I can use my Shift key and you'll feel the guide snap incrementally to those lines. So I'm going to drag 2 horizontal lines, one on either side of the one that bisects this horizontally as well as vertically. So you're looking for this kind of a configuration before we begin developing our design. So once again, these are 1/16 of an inch all the way around. And then in the center, horizontally and vertically, it was bisected. And then on either side of that center guide, another guide has been put that's a 1/16 of an inch on either side of the center. Okay, so now let's get started with the texturing. I'm going to go to my layer window, and I'm going to select the background layer, and I'm going to go to Filter, and just as our brick pattern, I'm going to add some noise. And I think I'll minimize the noise on this a bit. I'm going to go with 5. And now I'm going to hit W to get my magic wand tool. Now if you recall, we set the increment for our tolerance as 2. So that's a good place to start with this as well. I'll click randomly inside my document window. Right-click, hold the mouse down, and choose Similar. I'm going to hit Command J or Command C, Command V, and essentially what we've done is we made a selection and copy and pasted that pattern. And now if you return off your main layer, you're going to see transparency through that pixel arrangement. And what that means is now with that new layer, I'm going to go to Bevel and Emboss. And I want this to be the grout, so I'm going to go to Inner Bevel. And the technique, I'm going to choose Chisel Hard. And then I'm going to play with the size of this. I'm going to reduce the softness to 0. And let's make the size, let's go with 25. And I'm going to click OK, and I'll save this. And now I'm going to merge that down. So I'll go to the upper right hand corner of the layer window, and I'll choose merge down. So we have our background for our grout. Now we want to create those cinder blocks that we see. And it's pretty much the same process. So I think what we'll do is we'll actually use what we just made to serve as our cinder blocks as well. So I'm going to hit M on the keyboard, and I'm going to use the rectangle marquee. Now I'm going to go to View first, and I'm going to make sure that Snap to Guides is chosen, because it's going to make it a little easier to go in and click and drag the selection that I want. Now I'm going to zoom in on this a bit, and you can see that I want to have that selection around the inside guide. And once I've done that, I'm going to hit Command J, and it puts a copy of that selection on its own layer. So if I was to turn off the background layer, you can see now I've got the shape I want for that cinder block. Now I'm going to put the background back on, and with the layer I just generated, I'm going to name it Block. I'm going to go down to the FX, and once again I'll put the bevel and emboss on it. You can see we're on our way to making that cinder block shape. Now cinder blocks have a bit of a softer edge to them, so I'm going to first of all reduce the depth on this. I think I'll make the depth about 145, and I'm going to start to drag the softness, and let's make the soft 10, and let's reduce the size a bit, and we'll knock the size down to about 12. And I'm going to put an outer glow on this to separate it out from the grout. Now I could darken the grout, but if I go down to outer glow and I play with the value and the darkness of the outer glow, you can see it starts to separate that cinder block out from the background pretty nicely. So let's start by changing the size and spread on this. I'm going to make the spread 40, and then I'm going to make the size 10. And I'm going to click OK, and then I'll save. Now, what we need to do with our guides is put a half a cinder block down here and a half a cinder block down in the right hand corner. So I'm going to copy that cinder block layer by right clicking and choosing duplicate, or I could hit Command J, and I'll hit V to get my move tool, and I'm going to hold my shift key and drag it down, place it against the grout line, and then I'll drag it to here. I'm going to turn the background off so you can see what I've done so far. So this is what we're looking for at this point, minus the grout, which I've turned off for reference. I'll put that back on. I'll put my guides back on. I'm going to copy that cinder block I just placed in the lower right hand corner once again by choosing duplicate layer or hitting Command J, and I'm going to drag that one over to the other side, and I'm going to place it there. I'm going to go down to the background layer because I'm not sure, perhaps I might want the background a little bit dark, but I'm going to hide the guides. You can see now that I've got a grout line and I've got the pattern design I need to generate a much larger, broader pattern, but I'm going to go down and play with the values of the background. I'd like it to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to go to the black and white cookie at the bottom of the layer window. I'm going to go to levels, and in my levels window, I'm going to drag the dark value slider at the far left here towards the waveform that I see, and I'll stop just as I get to it. And then I'm going to drag the middle value to the right, and I'm going to set that for 0.7. If you wanted to put the exact measurements in, your middle value would be 0.7, and then your dark value would be, let's even it off at 70. All right, so now we've got our pattern design and we're ready to generate the larger broad pattern to fill the wall. I'm going to go up to Select All at the top of the user interface. And then I'm going to go to Edit, Copy Merged. I'm going to go to the template. And now I'm going to hit Command V to paste. Once I've copy pasted, I'm going to scale this sample down closer to the actual proportions we'll need for the wall itself. Next, I'm going to turn off the templates and I'm going to zoom in on that pattern. And I'm going to get my marquee. I'm going to make a very precise selection. And I'm going to go to Edit, Define Pattern. I'm going to delete this, Command D to deselect. I'm going to turn my layers back on so I can see this as it becomes generated. And I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, and I'm going to go to the last pattern generated in my pattern window and click OK. Now I've got the pattern that I want, and I'm going to hit V on the keyboard. I'm going to drop my transparency and I'm going to scale this down to fit into position. Now that I have my pattern in position, I'm going to duplicate it so that I can fill in the rest of the wall. So I'll hit Command J on the keyboard or right click and choose duplicate layer, and then I'll drag the duplicate over, holding the Shift key and lining it up so that the pattern is seamless. And then last thing I'll do is merge that layer down.